we've really enjoyed getting you know, the chance to play these pieces and kind of dig into them a little bit and kind of hear everybody's unique compositional voice. It's pretty cool.
Thank you guys for doing it so much,
Yeah, of
especially
course.
under these circumstances. um,
Not ideal for sure.
Not ideal.
Well, we are three-fourths of Orphic Percussion. So our good friend Cameron, he actually lives in Ohio, so we're um, we're real happy to be out here and get together. And we were all missing kind of playing with each other. We were supposed to go on tour about a month ago, and our tour got canceled. So
Hmm.
this is runner-up, we'll say, to, to doing our tour. So thank you guys so much for writing, and it's good to see everyone again. So we'll go ahead and we'll play each piece first, and then we'll kind of talk through some things that we learned as musicians in digesting your music, and any difficulties that we had or things that we really enjoyed about it. And we've only got about 10 minutes for comments on each one. So we'll try to be real clear and succinct. And then of course, if anyone in the class has a question, Dan, maybe you can kind of moderate that for us and call on people. But we'd love to hear from you or the composer, or things that you liked, or if there's something you want us to try now that you've got us here. That would be a real good opportunity to kind of we could be a guinea pig for you and experiment on something. So, all right. So drawing the line.
Awesome. Ooh. It's awesome. So the live stream, for whatever reason, it's not working. So just spread the word about that. But we're recording this at least.
Yeah, and sorry, Luke, I reached for the hi-hat and I hit my page turn right in the middle.
Yeah, awesome piece, man. I really like all the hocketed figure and like interaction between like the kabasa and the shaker. I think that's like a really cool kind of texture, and the way you layered the voices was. I like that it wasn't so one-dimensional. Like you started adding like people playing shaker and also playing the melody lines and stuff. So I really enjoyed that part of this piece where you're like kind of pseudo drum set-esque kind of thing. So I really enjoyed that in my part personally.
Cool, thank you.
Yeah, one thing I really appreciated was kind of your development of voices throughout. So, you know, including the kind of rhythmic interaction and how that started, and then you just varied it and it kind of morphed. And then one of my favorite spots, let's see, I don't remember exactly where it is, but Sean plays a rhythm for a while and then he kind of fades into the background and the vibe takes over. And, you know, it's just, if you don't really like voice it quite right, it doesn't make sense. So we worked on trying to like, okay, the marimba's got to come down here and the vibe needs to come out. But it's some really, really neat interaction going on.
Yeah, like B, the way you voiced it, the marimba being predominantly in the bass zone, and then you using the vibraphone was a really good choice, putting the melody in the vibraphone, because then you could hear the separation of voices. So that was easy in itself. So it didn't take a lot on our part to make the music sound right. It was written in, which I appreciated that. The other thing I really enjoyed about just reading and working through your piece was how clean the score was.
Yeah.
It was like very clean. The only thing that was not as clean was like the 7/4 beaming, like the way you're putting the bars in, and like the organization of the rest. But that's just a very simple, like when you're working on like cleaning up each individual part, that's an easy fix. But other than that, like everything was very clear, and I appreciated that aspect of it. I was never like, oh, what does he want here? It was very clear.
Cool, thank you.
Yeah, and I really enjoyed just kind of the clear delineation of sections from the opening kind of short intro with the vibraphone bowing, using that technique, and the shakers on top, cool sound, into the mallet, kind of more the meat, and then kind of change it up with a different feel after the mixed meter at letter E. And I thought that was just a really nice textural change. You know, having the glock kind of soft mallets and the arpeggiation in the vibraphone. So, yeah, it just creates a nice color. So,
Cool.
Yeah, questions for us?
Anything you have?
How I guess for the part 3 or player 3,
Yeah.
was that legible enough? I was worried when I was writing some of those parts that it was like wasn't going to be clear, mostly like kind of like the pseudo drum set kind
No,
of.
it was fine. And actually, Dan, I'm gonna join you from my iPad because I was gonna take you guys back to my setup so you could kind of see something to think about.
Cool.
Okay.
Yeah, you know, it lays really nice in the hands, and I like the inclusion of the mixed meter.
while Mike is kind of getting set up, the only thing that I would suggest, Luke, is when you switch from kabasa to shaker, if you noticed I was already holding the shaker and like using the kabasa on my arm, just because it's not enough time and it's very difficult to like pick up a shaker in that quick of time. So
Sure.
I would have maybe like just pick one voice. And then maybe you can like, cause you can mix and match shakers. So if you were like intending for like a thicker sound at the beginning and like crisper, you could kind of just notate that, and then we could figure out a way to kind of get those sounds, I guess.
Sure.
But that's a very small thing.
Yeah, because originally I think in my score I have written as Kabasa being in player 3 and Shaker only being in player 1. So that there wouldn't have to be like exchanging or switching like that. Was there like a plain reason why?
Maybe it wasn't clear that those were cues.
Oh, those is at a cue.
Okay. Oh, okay.
Gotcha.
I was just gonna say I really appreciate the glockenspiel cue in measure 71 thereon. It's kind of nice to be able to read that while playing the duple rhythm and the vibes.
Okay. Cool.
Go ahead, Mike.
Okay, so hopefully it won't feedback. Okay, it's good. Oh yeah, perfect. So one thing to think about when you're doing these multi setups is like the size of the instrument. And ordinarily, if I had a smaller glockenspiel, I would have probably put it up here in front of the concert toms, and it would have been okay. But because the only glockenspiel I have right now is this huge, gigantic pedal glock, I had to set it up this way. So it was a little cumbersome because in the opening, I had to play the hi-hat with my right foot, and then I had to switch around and do it with my left foot when I got to the glockenspiel. And there's not really a better way to do it just because of the kind of instrument that I had. So just something to think about. Plus, a lot of drum set players, they play drum set or they play hi-hat with their left foot. So that might be a little more comfortable. You might want to come up with a setup diagram for specifically how the instruments are supposed to work.
Okay.
But yeah, just an idea.
That was amazing. Thank you guys.
Thank you.
Yeah, glad you enjoyed it.
Pulling up the score. So something I appreciated, I was playing the vibraphone part. I appreciated all the detail towards pedaling. Like you even went to the extent of like detailing half pedal, which I appreciated it. And I like that you used the markings to actually show what you wanted to be pedaled. And I like that you dictated when something wasn't supposed to be pedaled, right? So that whole, I would say, measures 54 all the way to the end, that interaction with the marimba. I like that you notated that you're showing that you don't want it to be long, right? Which is something that a lot of people forget for percussion writing. So I appreciated that personally when I was working through your piece.
No problem.
Yeah, measure 35 through 46. I just like the dynamic kind of shading between the vibe and marimba. I mean, it's kind of a easy technique, but to have one voice coming up, one voice going down, and then crossing over, I just think it lends itself nice and created a nice kind of moment. So yeah, well done there.
Thank you.
For the timpani part, I could have used, I think, a little more dynamic direction at times because I was really kind of relying on listening to the other players. And it's interesting, sometimes as percussionists, we get a little overzealous. So if we see like a forte piano, we really want to go like whack, at the beginning of it. But I had that in my first line and it didn't seem like it made sense. So it's really more kind of like a mezzo piano volume. And I was trying to blend and realized I was really there kind of more for harmonic support. So so that was fine, but then it would have been nice at some point to have like a poco crescendo written in there so that, I know, okay, this is where I really need to build and help kind of grow the ensemble. And I hear it, right, as a musician, but I think that those kind of directions could definitely be added to the score. Just from a notation standpoint, at measure 47, I would work on the beaming and try to beam those only to a quarter note in the timpani part. I think you have them beamed to the half note, and one of them is actually even continuously beamed across the whole measure. So it was a little hard to read the rhythms in that.
Maybe I'll share the score with everyone.
Oh yeah, that'd be great.
Cool. Okay. You said measure 47.
Yeah, 47.
Okay.
Oh, this is great. Thank you.
This is
Yes.
perfect.
Amazing.
Yep.
Yeah, and if you go down even to the next, keep going, and one more. Yeah, so there you can see, yeah, beamed totally across the entire bar. So that's really, really hard to read, and we kind of get the idea, and we'll figure it out, but it'd be easier if that was rebeamed.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I caught just like a little quick notation thing in measure 64. And this is probably, maybe you were working with putting in some of those upbeat eighth notes, this really cool pointillistic section, but then you just happen to have two eighth note rests in measure 64. Yeah, so like, you read that and you're like, oh, it's a quarter note rest, and I've been playing all these and ones and threes, so I think part of the composer's job after they spend hours and hours on the score is once you extract those parts, it's great to just kind of go through each part and read it down and compare it to the score. Like I had one note question actually in measure 26, if you wouldn't mind going up there. Thank you. There's a 16th note motif that comes in multiple times, 29, 34, 39, and 43, and it's always F-A-D-A. But in measure 26, the first time we see it, it's F-B. And I kind of circled it. I think I played it as a B because that's what's written. But I was just curious. I wanted to ask you, Jordan, is that supposed to be a B or an A?
I think it's definitely supposed to be an A. Sorry.
Okay, interesting, cool.
Just to kind of expand on the kind of point that Mike brought out, when I'm writing and I'm writing for a group, I kind of write for BCI and marching band, so it's a little different, but it's kind of the same thing. I always talk about it as like Sibelius dynamics, where you're listening to the MIDI and you're living in that world, and those dynamics are perfect for the computer. So what I would do is when I clean up my parts, I really think about each individual part and the characteristic of the sound and how that would stick out in maybe instrumentation wise in the piece. And then I flush out all my dynamics again.
Okay.
And that's just one way that I I make sure I'm still cleaning my parts and I get to do all that out also. But I also kill two birds with one stone while thinking about dynamics in the real world versus dynamics which you want to hear that timpani sound and you're not going to hear it on the MIDI because it's that low frequency on your computer, but you're for sure going to hear it in real time, right?
Yeah.
So dynamics to composers versus dynamics for performers. That's the hard part. I struggle with that all the time, and I'm like, yeah, those are MIDI dynamics. I always tell my students that. So that's just the constant struggle, is trying to use your brain to kind of imagine what that would be like in the ensemble.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, or the flip of that, you write it so it sounds the way you want on the MIDI.
Yes.
And you're like, man, this is great. And then, you do it live and it's like, whoa.
Mm-hmm.
So, good.
Any questions for us on that one from anybody?
None from me.
Okay, great.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you. Woo!
Okay.
Awesome.
Cool. So,
Yeah, so I personally love the melody to this. Like very singable, very easy to follow. I think there's very clear like arc to the piece, which I appreciate. So I guess that's going along with the idea of development. I really appreciate the development, like you starting with here's the theme, you slowly build the marimba groove, and then you kind of have that peak F, and then K kind of develops more, which I like that you don't taper down so quick. So that was my favorite part. I really liked K, mostly because that's the most notes. And there's some cool stuff in here, and there's some cool lines that you can bring out. I didn't bring all of them out, but I brought some of them out. So I've enjoyed kind of working on K in particular to O, because that's some really cool writing, man. I really enjoy that part.
Thank you very much.
yeah, I wish I had, another month to really work this up, because some of the independence in there and the marimba part's really nasty, but it's really great writing, and it's totally doable. So I did want to applaud you for that, and it's neat the way that you use that kind of hemiola floating over the top right hand while the left hand still does the 7 groove. So that's really fun.
Thank you.
One thing that we were kind of talking about was the notation on the duples, right? Or is this one's
yeah.
okay?
No, this one.
Oh,
this one is
this
okay.
one's okay. Okay, sorry. 11 pieces in 2 days, really. One thing that was challenging for me was at T. I think if there is a way, but if you could rewrite that without using the ties.
Okay.
Yeah. Because it ends up being just a lot to look at with the tie. And then I got to go, oh, is this one tied? Is this one not? So, especially since a tie doesn't really mean anything to us, because we just, have a tack only. So, yeah, it would be much cleaner without that.
Okay.
And then just a thought, too. I was just thinking about the marimba part in general. I think a lot of times that you're using the marimba part to kind of drive the overall harmony while the vibe is playing melodic figures above. But if there was a way to create, I think, more variation in what the marimba part does and still achieve that same effect, could be really cool. Because after a while, just even as a performer, it was feeling like it was a little stagnant. And, some of that could be my fault, too, that I'm not, bringing it up or down as much. But it was basically you had my basic pattern that I played, and then you shifted it around the keys to develop the harmony that you want. And I was thinking if there was even more development in the marimba part, but still achieve that same idea, that would probably be more effective in the long run.
Okay. Awesome.
Yeah. So at S in my part, I just have a couple things. I noticed in my part, you actually put 3 eighth note rests. And I would have appreciated just a dotted quarter rest.
Okay.
And something else I noticed is that you kind of put rests in there. I wasn't sure if at you wanted them shorter or if that was just a notation thing.
That's more of just a notation thing.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that was kind of like the only thing in that section. And then something, if you noticed, the figure in the beginning, ba 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 ba. That's a fourth measure of B. So
Mhm.
16. If you notice, I didn't do the ripples, and that's kind of because anytime you're kind of moving between those notes and you want to get that falling down effect, it's not as effective with two notes,
Okay.
right? So it works in Mike's part because he has like a chord that he's rolling, right? He can play 3 or 4 notes and you get that kind of blah, blah sound. It sounds like a rhythm more when you play it on the vibraphone. So that would just be some suggestion, as I would just, take that out and have them play the chord itself, right? Just the notes simultaneously.
Okay.
Yeah, and actually I'll piggyback on that because I had this same question. So in the measure before C in the marimba part, right? So you have the left hand has the little arpeggio symbol, but then the right hand doesn't. So did you intentionally want that?
It was almost kind of like splitting up the role between the marimba and the vibes, but that doesn't really work in hindsight, like timbre-wise, just with the whole
Oh, okay.
overall sort of thing.
Okay, so what I ended up doing was actually just rippling all 4 notes, and if you wanted only the bottom to be kind of rolled ahead of time and have the right hand land on the downbeat, you might consider notating that as like a 2-note grace figure going up to the right hand. That might be a little more clear to help keep the right hand in time and still get that ripple leading into it.
Okay.
Yeah, so maybe just a different way to notate that.
And then there was just one thing on my part, Evan, is if you can see this, my part, this is all good, and then I have one system on the next bar. So I might just have an old version. It might have been a My Dum Dum, but that just created kind of an unnecessary page turn.
Page turn, okay.
So
Sorry
that's just
about that.
a cleaning up thing.
Okay.
But yeah, I really enjoyed playing your piece.
Oh,
Thank you very
I
much.
had a lot of issues in here, and I think I talked about in the previous master class too, where like 2 mallets were on the same note, or there was some hand crossing, or things like that. So, for example, let's find one.
Right here, right? Letter B.
It's everywhere. not.
Oh wait, no, not right there. Sorry, that's a C.
Yeah, there
that's
were
fine.
quite a few times. Maybe it's in a different section. And anyway, there were some.
And is a ninth too big as well?
No, the 9th was okay.
Okay.
Yeah, I didn't mind that. So, of course, I can't find one right now, but there were definitely some. So
Okay.
I might just go back through there kind of with a fine-tooth comb and make sure. There was definitely one spot my hands were supposed to be like that. So I said,
Sorry.
okay, I'm just going to leave out that bottom note there. Cool.
I think that the idea that they're giving you of changing the marimba's role at some point is a really good idea, especially because it's a pretty long piece.
Yeah.
At some point, like the marimba can be melodic also, so it would be a nice change
Well,
of
you know,
texture.
and the neat thing about the vibraphone too that the marimba can't do is it has sustain. So I mean, what about use that to your advantage and just some huge open chords and a little bit of space in there instead of constant rhythm the whole time? That might be really nice. And then let the marimba take the melody, or interplay between how marimba creates sustain with a roll and how the vibe creates sustain with actual sustain, right? And you could kind of have some interplay there, still getting sustained pitches, but happening in 2 different ways.
Okay, awesome. Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
cool.
Space dust.
Space dust.
Yeah, we're gonna do a little bit of shuffle, and then we'll be ready soon.
Cool. If anyone has Jessica's cell phone, if someone could text her, that'd be great.
don't know why I did that in the beginning. I couldn't fix it, but it made a big gap right there.
Oh. If you have Mac,
Yeah.
I think you want to go select everything you want on a page. Command Option Shift M. That creates a page.
Okay.
Is that right, Mario?
So, Dan, I was curious, the orchestration book that they're going through, does it have timpani ranges?
It should. It's pretty inclusive of everything.
Okay, because there were two pieces that called for an A on the 26-inch drum, which very few drums are going to be able to hit. I would be thinking a B flat on that. So this one has it, and I can get it, but...
Okay. Yeah, I was kind of going out on a limb there just because I saw that there was, I Googled it too, and I just kind of saw different things, but yeah, I was kind of just, I guess, hoping that it would.
You know, the interesting thing that, you know, sometimes composers don't think a lot when they write for timpani too, is that wherever that pitch is in the range of that drum, right, you're going to get a different timbre. So if the pitch is low in the drum, the head is really flabby. It's not going to respond as well versus if it's in a higher range in the drum. So even though I can even hit the A, the question is, are you more concerned with the pitch or do you actually want a good tone? Because I'm not going to get a good tone from that drum. And because the part is so busy, really if I was going to perform this, I would get another 29-inch drum, right, and have two 29s. Which for an orchestra, right, that's an ordeal because then they're out like renting another instrument. So, so just some things to think about there.
Yeah, I just didn't want to assume that you had multiple of the same size drum. But
Very cool.
Thanks, guys.
Yay, Zoom claps.
So I love the title, and I totally feel that. Like it feels very celestial, and I think that you really kind of captured that in your mood, and I love the brightness of the glockenspiel and the counterpoint and the marimba. all of that's really great. I had one question in my part, measure 59. So I love that you have the little pedal slide in there. And I wasn't sure if, usually when you do that, it's executed with a roll so that you can really hear it, or it just slides in one direction. So I wasn't sure if I was supposed to re-attack each note or just roll and kind of sustain in there. So, I kind of used my intuition and said, okay, I think it's supposed to, kind of provide some body there, so I rolled it. Was that what you were thinking?
No, I was thinking more of a sustain, so it would be a single attack on each dotted half. Just to kind of go like, like a kind of sliding effect. But
okay, so maybe you might want to put, a note in there with an asterisk and say like slow glissando.
Okay.
Yeah.
Can the pitches even sustain that long?
Yeah, it can. But only going over a second, it's probably going to be harder to hear, which is why I rolled it, so you could really hear the pitch bend as I went. Because otherwise, I think that the interval is just too small. You're not really going to get the effect that you're thinking of.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it. Like Mike was saying, space dust. I mean, you kind of have this atmospheric alien kind of sound with like glittering, the sparkle of the sky and the stars. So I really enjoyed the imagery that the piece and kind of gives. So my only thing is I really enjoyed playing the marimba part. I think it sits nicely on the instrument, so that was great. So in measure 38, I have a fermata written, and it says wait for timpani to finish tuning. So then, Mike, he kind of like just kept going and right through into D, and I said, oh, you don't have a fermata there? He's like, nope. So he had a fermata in his part, and he is able to get through it without needing time to tune. So I didn't mind the pause. I have fast feet. So I'm just curious, when you see a fermata in a part that's not in all the parts, right, then you're going to have players moving forward and other players pausing. So that was like one, like just kind of like cleaning the part kind of thing. And then there is a double bar there because of the key change. So did you want to pause there, or was it supposed to go right through?
I did want to pause. So yeah, it was my mistake missing the fermata on the.
Sometimes when we write in, the score and you put it in the top staff first player or whatever, it just won't, get in. You have to highlight all and get it into all bars. But
yeah, I was having a lot of Sibelius like syntax issues.
Sibelius is known for that. The other thing was letter E. Cool rhythm, like in octaves, but like 2 octaves apart. And it just took me a second to kind of wrap my head around just that rhythm. And I was just wondering if there's a different way to beam that, like beat 2, so that we see the 16th notes kind of clearer. I don't know. I mean, I'm just curious. It just took me a second to be like, oh, okay, it's just the same thing, just offset a 16th note, So I don't know, something to play around with. I don't know.
So, Keiko Abe does that a lot in her music, and I think I showed you guys an example when I came out there a couple of months ago. Or Dan still has my scores. But
hey man, Shelter in Place has your scores. It's out of my control.
Right. Yeah, but how she did it was she actually would beam the 16th notes across to the other clef, right? So maybe that would be easier to see that rhythmic interaction if you beamed it that way.
The beams in the middle, between the staffs.
Right.
So like you got 2 pitches going up and 2 pitches going down.
Yeah.
So something I liked is just how the melody floated on top of everything. It kind of, I don't know if you guys listen to any like, I'm gonna throw non-classical examples, so don't hate me. But like Tennyson, if you ever listen to any like electronic music by Tennyson, he will use odd meter, but he tries to make it feel not odd meter. That's kind of like how Jacob Collier does some things too. He'll add some odd meters, but he doesn't really necessarily want you to feel it. And I kind of felt a little sense of that, at least from the melody and how it sat, is like I didn't really have to try to feel the meter very hard. It kind of just was easy to lay into it. So I appreciated that aspect of it. There's just a couple things in my part. Like sometimes you'd use an A sharp instead of a B flat. So I'd have like a B flat and then an A sharp. That was just a little confusing. Sometimes I would like, for me to read in real time. Or sometimes you'd have like a courtesy A flat, like pop in on like a new rehearsal marking, like at E, there's like an A flat that pops back in on my part.
But if you do a courtesy one, you might want to put it in parentheses.
Yeah, that would have been a better thing to do.
But they're just very small things.
Okay.
One thing I loved was like in the timpani part, you know, sometimes I just felt like I was kind of there for rhythmic accompaniment, but then there's these cool little moments where I'll play like a motive with the melody. And so like one of those was in measure 26. Dan's gonna find it in the score, you know, but I'm kind of just doing, da-da-da-da-dum, you know, yeah. So it was just really cool because I'm just kind of like the backup drummer for a while and holding down the rhythm, but then all of a sudden I get this really neat moment with Sean where, you know, we like to look lovingly in each other's eyes when we play the same rhythms. So,
yeah, I really tried to incorporate what you said about how timpani can also be like a melodic instrument and not, you know, just in the back.
Well, that was it.
That was my
you nailed
original
it,
plan with that.
Yeah, it really had this cool moment where I actually backed off my dynamic there a little bit because I wanted to support him and you get that timbre at the same time and not overpower it. But then I came back up kind of to like that more rhythmic supportive role. So it was just a cool moment.
Cool. I'm glad you like that.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Okay.
Any other questions from anybody, any other students about this piece or anything?
Danny, is there a reason that at D the timpani doesn't have a key signature?
I mean, I figured they would just be in the tuning. I guess that's just a lack of knowledge there.
Yeah, key signature would be fine.
Okay.
You know, it is a little cumbersome to keep reading all the flats every measure.
Got it. Yeah, I just figured, you know, it's staying on one note, so like, you know.
Yeah, and one other thing, just a notation thing. So like in, I mean, measure 10 is an example. But when any kind of percussion instrument, if you have a roll that's not tied, right, then we usually put a little bit of space in there. So it'd be like the difference of going bre-ba-ba would be how I would play that figure, just a really, really tight crushed bre-ba-ba instead of roll off bum. So
okay.
I didn't know if that was something that you thought about or specifically you wanted that, but
yeah, I guess right there I was thinking relying too much on the MIDI. Because the MIDI played what I wanted, but yeah.
Cool.
Oh, Mario chatted something interesting in there. Read that, Danny. Awesome. Anything else about Danny's piece?
Got it.
Cool.
Thanks,
Percussion Cafe.
Percussion Cafe.
Thanks, guys, again.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. That was, I mean, the audio was clipping a little bit, but it was otherwise you did great.
Awesome. Sorry for the restarts. The mulligan.
No, that's fine.
I was like, something feels really odd.
That's fine.
Figure it out.
Well, at least you caught it before you were like at the part. Oh well.
Yeah.
So wait, yeah, the only issue is the Zoom was cutting out, so it wasn't anything you did. It just the Zoom recording was kind of blech. It's nothing you're what?
Do you want to hear it again?
No. I'm just saying. It's just never mind. It's fine.
Okay.
I love how it kind of had this like Bach feel to it. You know, all this really cool counterpoint going on. Dan, why don't you pull up on the score measure 26 for everyone in the timpani part? Yeah.
Yeah.
It was just interesting for me, I think, in a 3-person chamber ensemble to see a triple forte. When I'm paired and I'm on the largest naturally loud instruments anyway. So go big or go home, right? But yeah, just for what it's worth, probably whenever you had me at, forte or in there, I was kind of more like mezzo piano plus in my mind. But I also play a lot with like 80-person orchestras, so that's kind of my volume mindset. And, some of that changes. But yeah, I really like the writing. Here again, probably not going to get an A on that 26-inch timpani anywhere else, so just a pitch thing.
Yeah, super clean parts.
Mm-hmm.
That's always really nice. So, thank you. I think, I'm not sure if you wanted to leave it open for the vibraphone, but I think I kind of took liberties with what you wanted to hear in terms of pedaling.
Yeah, I
think
didn't.
If you wanted something specific, I think you probably could have given just a little bit more information.
I think it's up to. I left it up to you whether you wanted to pedal or not.
Okay.
Just kind of a general comment. As we were looking through a lot of the scores, I think that some people were maybe a little judicious in your use of slurs and phrase markings to help give the performers direction. And you can connect a couple of bars together in a slur, right? And we'll do that just like a flute player would, so that we kind of know where the line is supposed to be going, and that helps inform our decisions musically a little bit more. So
I think it's personally nice to not leave it to chance what the composer really wants to hear. We're obviously going to be interpreted, right? And we're going to put our interpretive spin on it so that it's different and our musical voices are heard. And there is a point where maybe that's stifled by someone over communicating. Like we've had composers be like, I need you to buy the Vic Firth M39, this material. That's probably a bit extra. But in this case, it would have been nice it just helps us first glance, oh, he wants to hear this, let's do that.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, this is a very clear climax, So sometimes a little bit more information can help. But I also see your view on trying to keep it open and see what someone crafts. I guess it's just in the situation when you don't have a lot of time, that can definitely help, I think.
Okay.
Yeah, I had 3 quick spots to check out different approaches in beaming. So measure 18
right there
in the timpani part. And so if you look at the first one, you had that all beamed under the dotted quarter, which is fine. Then if you go to 24.
Oh. Wow. Whoops.
Yeah, in 24, you had me split up there, each individual 8th note. And then a similar situation in 43, where that was split to the 8th note. Yeah, and so I think, just maybe some consistency there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's more because of the triplets, splitting the triplets
I
up.
don't mind seeing it all in one grouping. We're used to that totally. So if you had an 8th note, a 16th note triplet, and then an 8th note, all
beamed together
under one beam, yeah, that would be okay.
All right.
Because you know, I'm feeling this in 6/8, so I'm feeling da 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 da. So when I get to that, I see da 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 da, right? It's just.
Well, actually, it says here it's supposed to be in 2/4. You see that, right? Time
At
signature?
I'm sorry, I'm talking about the one at 24.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry.
So da 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 da, right? So it's just really clean under the one beam.
Uh-huh.
I had something similar to that with notation as well. Measure 35.
Mm-hmm.
Or just in general, measure 32 to 35. Like the tambourine, if you're playing it with the stick, you're not gonna have that duration. So if you just wrote attack without ties, that would have helped. Unless you wanted to hear length on the note. It's just a little easier to the note.
Yeah, I think I could have changed that a little.
In particular, 35, like the quarter note on the E was just like, wait, what? So if you just wrote like 16th dotted 8th, and then 16th rest dotted 8th again,
Mm-hmm.
that would have been just a little bit clear to the eye on first
Okay.
read.
But it's weird because this.
Oh, yeah, that was weird.
Yeah.
I guess unless you wanted, like, rolls would be the only way to kind of do that, right?
Right.
Yeah.
So, Jacob, if you want rolls, you could just notate them.
I don't think I wanted to roll. I think it's just better just.
Yeah, then just cut that one out.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of hard just because percussionists, we don't normally see that. You know, we're used to just reading a lot of attack in general.
Yeah, Jacob, I really enjoyed this piece and working on it. I just think the marimba writing is really nice and sits well in the hands. You know, once you get through the permutations of what you need to do to accomplish it. So nice job there. I did have one kind of thing. It was measure 8, 9, 10. If you go to the 6/8, you see I have some 16th note rhythm, that top A, and the beaming, right? So I see all these stems going down. And then all of a sudden, measure 8, I see stems up and stems down. And so it just visually, I was like, oh, okay, kind of interesting.
I was trying.
And then we're back to stems down in measure 9, stems back up. So I'm just curious if maybe those stems, those dyads there should be connected.
Yeah.
As a, you know, I mean, I see it's kind of like a rhythmic, you know, kind of thing. But yeah, I was just curious. And then measure 18. This is actually just so that we could show an illustration of, I think it was Bass Dust right before. We were talking about beaming with a beam in the middle of the stabs, so you can connect notes in the treble and notes in the bass. So there's a great example of that. Yeah, so that, I'm just saying that's kind of what we were talking about in the last piece. And yeah, measure 26 was kind of one of my favorite spots because I just like hearing that top line. Bang, 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 da-da-da-da, bang, bang. I thought that was cool. Awesome. Any questions on anything else, guys?
That's thank you very much.
Cool. How are we doing on time?
Yeah.
It's 2:15.
Yeah, we're right in the middle, so yeah, we're
Awesome.
doing good.
Cool.
Okay. So the next one that we had on our list, if we were looking in terms of programming, it's actually a really, really clean looking score. It's Encirclement. So we could take a look at that, but we were debating actually for a while if we were going to be able to put this together because the marimba part is so hard. Yeah. And so we just wanted to look through it and talk through what makes it difficult, so that, you know, hopefully we can learn something or get some revisions, because we definitely would love to play it when we come out and do our live performance in the fall. If fall is still happening, or maybe spring, who knows?
So I personally love this piece, like just listening to it. There's a lot of cool ideas. It's just like you said, the marimba part in particular is just, there's a lot of things that probably won't sound as great as maybe you would think in your head, just because of the technical difficulties with it. So, like for example, if you check out 34, like maybe a pianist could handle that quite well or quite easily. But if you look at 34, it's just, you know, you're moving contrary motion. Your left hand is an octave in the lowest range, and you're switching from octave grip to other grips. And like jump, 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 and then you're moving in all this triadic. It's just a lot of motion, like really quick in that part. So some suggestions we thought is maybe, you know, we were looking at like Mike's part on the xylophone. That is a little thinner, and maybe you could use like people playing on one marimba and have the xylo off as well. So you're working on, you know, 2 players on a marimba. One's getting that really low, beefy, low octave sound, which I can tell that's like the cornerstone of this whole piece, is like hearing that groove that's set up from the bass voice. But maybe you could get that from a player and have the other player play some xylophone, the xylo moments you really want to hear that are emphasized. That was one idea we had. Do you have anything?
Yeah, so just looking at like 29, yeah, 29 is kind of one of those measures that this would really be impossible, I think, even for the finest marimbas. It would, anyone would probably just frustrate themselves learning this measure. And, you know, maybe after a week or so, we could probably get it close. But the challenge is in having to switch back and forth from the double stop. Like I've got to come out of this run, and then land into this double vertical. So that's really difficult. And then actually just the speed of getting that run and the independence is really, really tough. So I would be looking more to measures of like 34 is a good example for probably peak difficulty there. And I think if you want 16th note runs, you're probably at this tempo, right? At this tempo, you're probably going to need to sacrifice one of the hands so that both hands could be doing the run, right? I think, yeah, to demand that out of both is pretty challenging. And yeah, actually the one that you've got highlighted right there, 31, 2, 3, yeah, that would be very difficult adding those and then having the left hand also do the 16ths and land in an octave.
I see, yeah.
Yeah.
Like I really like the lines. Like I like the melody, and I think what you're doing is like, okay, this instrument, it's like a lot of interjections, you know, there's a lot of play on melody, and that's great. I just think it, like Mike said, it's like not possible to lay down that groove and also play that interjection. So something I was doing is like not playing the bass groove and then trying to jump into that double stop. Like if you're looking at like 25, I would just play ba-da-da, da-da-da-da, and then try to jump into the chords. But that's what I was kind of suggesting. Maybe like put the melody a little bit more clearly in a different instrument, or have them kind of play back and forth, so that you can have someone cover that bass voice and then give that the marimbas the opportunity to play that line by itself and then go back into that group.
Yeah, like I almost wonder if the marimba part was split up between 2 players and some of the auxiliary stuff was actually given to both players. So like if I had a marimba and then, you know, a conga in front of me or something like that, and, you know, could also get those other sounds while I'm doing marimba, because that would be really easy to have 2 or 4 mallets and playing only the treble line, you know, and get some accessory stuff in there too. Like maybe that's another way to do it.
Yeah, so I think it could be as simple as like trying to think about the most idiomatic like instrumentation that you can put the same parts. Like try to keep the parts, but put them in a way that you could get all the voices covered in an easy way. So that's what I was thinking. Like if everyone had like a sort of multi-percussion setup, that would really help, because then you could cover all these lines. None of them are crazy, and the ranges don't kind of intermix, which is nice, especially in the marimba part.
Yeah, I see. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, that was one thought I had about potentially taking some of the complexity out of the marimba, because, yeah, I mean, I did have that thought in the back of my mind in the beginning, and I kind of, for some reason, like, got kind of lost in it. So I do apologize for that.
No, and that's
sweat.
okay. And like Sean said, like
Yeah.
I was a classically trained pianist before I changed my major, and so looking at this from piano eyes, like this is totally doable, right? And I could work this up without too much trouble, I think. But just on marimba, the mechanics are different, and we have to think about interval changes, the independence of the hand. Really wreaks havoc in the brain depending which way your rotations are going, and it can kind of, throw you out a little bit. So,
I was gonna say, even just playing in different keys, right? This happens to be, 5 sharps, and so our elbow is coming in and out quite often because we're going to the accidentals. Maybe in C major, it's easier.
But then it's worse because you're all on white keys.
You're all on white keys.
Yeah.
But so
D major may be a little bit better.
Yeah.
But the 5 sharps, like he said, anytime you're moving in thirds, right? If you're playing thirds in B major on a marimba, it's just like, you're constantly moving back and forth, and the elbow is constantly involved.
In and out.
So when you combine that with contrary motion, it's just like,
it's challenging.
I tried.
Yeah.
Sean tried, and he's one who, he tries.
What about the first, the 8th notes at the beginning?
Oh, I had a question. In the marimba part, right off the bat, measure 3. So I was playing that because what it's written is 16 notes, right? So 1, 2, boom.
Yeah.
Okay,
That's correct.
That is correct.
Oh,
That's
that
fast.
is very fast. That's like really, really hard. Like
At 87.
that's just really fast. So maybe something you could do is have them apart. So you could have start with the low hand.
Oh, that's what I did mean. It was gonna be a 16th note together. Yeah, I didn't.
Gotcha.
I heard a couple different ways of notating that I tried, and it ended up looking worse. So I kind of was like, I don't know, just keep it.
Yeah,
Maybe,
that's one
I
of
don't
those
know.
ideas where you would have the beam in the middle, and you would have you'd keep it like that. You'd meter. You'd actually write out the 16 notes.
Yeah.
I see. Okay.
Right. That's what I kind of thought, but then I was confused when you went to, if you look at measure 12, that was a roll, right? Or I guess you still wanted 16 notes there too.
Yeah, it was a roll between both.
Oh, so that was a roll, not 16 notes.
So I'm trying to think. So it would be 8th in one and then 8th in the other, right?
Oh, okay. So yeah, got it.
Yeah.
I think, Kyle, I remember a similar thing happening with your string quartet, vaguely, where you were writing things that sounded really awesome on playback, but when it got to real players, they were like, "Whoa, this is crazy hard." And I'm just wondering if next time, or when you go to revise this, even just imagine you were playing the instrument. I mean, because the computer can do anything, and we know that, and that's one thing. But when it gets to human beings, you really just gotta from the get-go think about that instrument physically and do this stuff.
Yeah.
You just kind of see, that it's really difficult.
Luke, Kyle, just because I don't have it in front of me, in your original draft, how did you have the conga and the xylophone part separated out?
Well, originally I had a separate staff below with just 2 lines for.
Okay, right, and I think I had asked you to combine them.
Yeah.
Seeing the way that it came out, exactly where you're looking, Dan, that was really hard to read with them both in the same register. So I think, because conga is not pitched, you can put that thing wherever. So I think had that been out of the way of the xylophone notes, but in the same staff, it probably would have been fine. But it got really cumbersome, for example, measure 36 and 37, where they were just right over the top of each other. So actually seeing it that way versus having a separate staff, I probably would have preferred the separate staff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Would you want the conga high-low pitch to be below the xylophone notes or above, just as a preference?
I think probably above, because I think the way that I would do it is I would have the xylophone in front of me directly and then put the congas in front, right? So then having that visual orientation of seeing these conga pitches higher, and then that equates me to a reach, right? So putting them somewhere up there above the staff, I think would probably help.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah, and just in terms of chamber music, something that I've noticed is a lot of the music we play isn't that full, right? Like a lot of composers, less is more, and the clarity of the voices is really important. So I think in this case, like if this was a solo, like it would make sense. The main thing here is that like some of it's doable, but I think the main thing is you wouldn't hear it as you want to hear it. So that was my only concern is, you know, like if you allow it to be a little less and let it breathe amongst the group, that usually comes across a little better, I think. Just in my experiences, especially with the music we play, it's really not that stacked to the brim on each player.
Right.
You know, so kind of in like marching band lingo, they always say like plan your moments. So it's like this is super dense, and then this is not at all, right? And it's like the thing there is clarity of voices and like what is sonorous and what's your primary, tertiary, all those layers. That's huge like lingo in the marching band world, and if you don't do that, they just like completely obliterate you with buzzwords. So that's kind of like those things kind of apply here as well.
Yeah, maybe if you want to reach out to me during the summer a little bit, I could help you do some revisions on that and send you some examples of like peak marimba difficulty, right? Where you could see, okay, these are some of the hardest pieces in the literature and here's what it looks like. And then you would be able to kind of notice those moments, I think, when they have faster runs, you're sacrificing a hand so that you can get those to happen. Then we can probably find a happy medium somewhere.
Okay. Yeah, for sure.
Mm-hmm. Cool. But yeah, I mean, we really want to put it together because it looks great, and
I like the piece.
Yeah.
I like it. It's got great feel, and it's got some really great moments.
Yeah.
I just don't want to play it really terrible in front of people.
Would transposing it to a slightly easier key help a little bit?
A little bit, but not enough.
Not much. Okay.
No.
Okay.
That's just another thing where it's like, oh, it's in B as well. Oh, yeah.